World War II was fought not just with bullets and bombs, but with meth, morphine, and Hitler's personal stash of high-grade opioids. Imagine soldiers who could march for 48 hours without sleep, pilots who dove to their deaths on methamphetamine, and a dictator so drugged up his decisions may have cost millions of lives. This isn't fiction. It's history, a side of World War II most people have never heard. Did drugs warp Hitler's mind? And did his addiction directly impact how the war ended? But before we get there, you'll uncover how nearly every major nation in the war used pharmaceuticals to push human limits, break down fear, and in some cases, destroy minds. Let's get into it. Let's start in Nazi Germany. In 1938, a Berlin pharmaceutical company, Temmler Werke, released a new over-the-counter pill called Pervitin. It was methamphetamine, what we now know as crystal meth. Doctors prescribed it for depression, housewives used it for energy, and students popped it before exams. But in 1939, the Nazi military saw an opportunity. Before launching the invasion of Poland, the Wehrmacht distributed Pervitin to soldiers. And by 1940, before the invasion of France, over 35 million meth pills had been issued. According to German military pharmacology records, 1940, soldiers were told Pervitin would enhance alertness and reduce fatigue. What happened next stunned the world. German troops advanced through the Ardennes forest, something experts thought was impossible. Using sheer speed and energy, they barely slept. They marched for days. The term blitzkrieg, or lightning war, wasn't just about tanks and air raids. It was powered by meth. Even rations included it: Flieger Schokolade, Flyer chocolate for pilots, Panzer Schokolade, tank chocolate for armored crews. The result? A nearly unstoppable force, at least temporarily, but the side effects were brutal: hallucinations, cardiac arrest, mental breakdowns. One German officer wrote in his journal, "The men are machines, but some break." When the Allies discovered meth and captured German gear, they took notes. In 1940, the British RAF began issuing Benzedrine, a form of amphetamine, to bomber pilots and long-range patrols. It helped them stay awake on 12-hour missions across enemy territory. The Americans followed suit. By 1942, U.S. forces had added Benzedrine to their official medical kits. According to the U.S. Army Surgeon General's 1945 report, over 250 million amphetamine tablets were issued during the war. Soldiers called them pep pills or alert tablets. One American paratrooper said, "I didn't sleep for 3 days during the Battle of the Bulge. And I didn't feel tired. I just kept going." Amphetamines were even recommended to tank crews, dispatch riders, and radar operators. By 1945, the U.S. military's use of stimulants had become widespread, even normalized. Now let's look at Japan, arguably the most extreme drug use of all. Japan used Philipon, a meth variant, starting in the late 1930s, but it became standard military issue by the early 1940s. Kamikaze pilots were reportedly injected with meth before their suicide missions to eliminate fear and induce tunnel vision. The Japanese kamikaze pilots are remembered for their terrifying suicide attacks. But few people know what fueled their deadly resolve. Before boarding their planes, many kamikaze pilots were injected with Philipon, a high-grade form of methamphetamine. The goal wasn't just alertness, it was mental rewiring. Meth removed hesitation, dulled fear, and created hyperfocus. Japanese military doctors believed it would purify the mind before death. Pilots would write goodbye letters, receive a meth shot, and then walk calmly, eerily to their planes. Once in the sky, some pilots were reported to laugh or sing as they flew toward certain death. After the war, leftover Philippine flooded Japanese streets, creating the country's first major drug epidemic. By 1948, over 1.5 million Japanese civilians were addicted. The kamikaze weren't just willing to die. They were chemically prepared to do it with a smile. These weren't optional. Meth was used to remove doubt, create mental clarity, focus the pilot on the singular objective, death. Some pilots took it in pill form. Others received injections directly before boarding their planes. In fact, when Japan surrendered in 1945, leftover Philippine flooded Japanese streets. By 1948, there were more than 1.5 million meth addicts in Japan, a post-war crisis few talk about today. The Nazi obsession with chemical enhancement didn't stop with Pervitin. Inside concentration camps like Sachsenhausen, the SS began testing an experimental drug cocktail called D-Naek. In 1944, as Germany grew desperate, Nazi doctors began testing a horrifying drug cocktail called D-Naek in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. The formula: cocaine, methamphetamine, and oxycodone, all packed into a single pill. Prisoners were forced to march for 90 kilometers, 56 miles, while carrying heavy backpacks. After taking D-Naek, what happened? Some prisoners became eerily energetic, marching like machines for hours. But others collapsed mid-stride, convulsed, or died from cardiac arrest. The SS observed and took notes as these men were chemically transformed into zombie soldiers. The Nazis planned to issue D9 to elite commandos for sabotage missions behind enemy lines. Fortunately, the war ended before this nightmare drug reached full-scale production. But the document survived, and today, military historians agree this was a horrifying glimpse into an early attempt at pharmaceutical warfare. D9 was never about survival. It was about control of mind, body, and humanity. It combined cocaine, methamphetamine, oxycodone, a powerful opioid. Declassified Nazi records show prisoners were forced to march 90 kilometers carrying 20-kilogram packs after being given D-Naek. The goal? Create a miracle pill for the Nazi super soldier program. Some prisoners collapsed, some died, but the SS kept testing. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a systematic program to replace natural human endurance with pharmacological control. It was a horror story disguised as research. Meanwhile, all sides used one drug religiously: morphine. Medics carried syrettes, small tubes like toothpaste with single-use morphine shots. The goal was pain relief. The reality? Mass addiction. Injured soldiers were often given multiple morphine doses during recovery with little oversight. Some returned home with lasting dependencies. The German medical system was especially reliant on Eukodal, a heroin-like opiate. Doctors administered it frequently to soldiers and even top officials. So here's the big question. Did drugs influence Hitler's decisions in the final phase of World War II? In the final months of World War II, Hitler was no longer the man who once commanded Europe. He was physically frail, mentally paranoid, and chemically dependent. His personal doctor, Theodore Morell, injected him daily with a concoction of methamphetamine and Eukodal, a synthetic heroin far stronger than morphine. This dangerous combo, known today as a speedball, is infamous for causing psychosis, paranoia, and erratic behavior. By 1945, Hitler had tremors, couldn't walk without help, and reportedly gave military orders that made no sense. He ordered non-existent armies to counterattack, destroyed infrastructure needed by civilians, and screamed at his generals for betraying him. But the truth? His body was failing, and his mind was cracking under the weight of withdrawal and delusion. When Allied bombing cut off Germany's pharmaceutical supply chain, Hitler's condition spiraled further. Some now believe that in his final days, he was hallucinating, unable to distinguish fantasy from reality. A warlord brought to his knees, not just by armies, but by addiction. Yes, and historians now believe it was a major factor in Germany's downfall. In the final year of the war, Hitler's reliance on drugs increased. He demanded Eucadol injections before key strategy meetings. Eucadol is considered 1.5 to 2 times stronger than morphine. When mixed with stimulants like meth, it creates a speedball, known to trigger delusions and manic behavior. By 1945, Hitler was refusing to retreat from the Eastern Front, obsessing over wonder weapons, giving contradictory orders, staying isolated in the Führer bunker for days at a time. British and Soviet intelligence noted bizarre behavior, talking to himself, scratching obsessively, refusing food for days, then binging. Many experts now believe Hitler was suffering from severe addiction, meth psychosis, opioid withdrawal symptoms. And when Allied bombing destroyed German pharmaceutical factories, his drug supply vanished. In his final days, Hitler was reportedly shaking, incoherent, and paranoid. Some historians believe he ordered the destruction of bridges and fuel depots not for strategy, but out of withdrawal-induced madness. In other words, a drug dictator may have destroyed his own army. World War II was the deadliest war in human history, but behind the tanks and trenches was a pharmaceutical war waged in the bloodstream of every side. Meth powered the blitzkrieg, Benzedrine kept Allied troops fighting morphine, numbed millions of wounds. Dynamite turned prisoners into test subjects, and Hitler's drug spiral may have warped his mind beyond reason. Let this be a reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't on the battlefield, it's in a syringe. If this shocked you, share it. Leave a comment. Which part stunned you the most? And don't forget to subscribe for more untold war stories.